Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining the show today. A lot going on. Cubs doing well. A lot of things happening there. A lot of kind of prospect news. Just a lot of good stuff. I mean, the Cubs didn't win yesterday, but definitely felt like that was a game they could have and should have won if they wouldn't have traded away their entire bullpen. They may have won it.
That may have helped.
It might have helped, but yeah, I mean, the last time we talked, it was before the Orioles game on Thursday, and the Cubs have since gone 3-1. And they've won several 1-1 games. Actually, all three of those games were one-run games. The Cubs haven't been great in one-run games this year, but they've been finding a way to win those games lately. Thursday, Adrian Sampson looked really well. Evan, what do you make of Adrian Sampson? I mean, he's kind of come out of nowhere. He's an older guy, but man, he's pitching really well.
Yeah, and I still, admittedly, and I'm trying to pull it up now to see kind of where, because Sahadev, I think it was Sahadev wrote, Sharma, that is, wrote a little bit about him and kind of the things that he's changed, because, I keep talking about it. We saw it his previous start. He gave up a couple homers. I keep looking at like how he has to have changed. I know he has changed something, but this isn't a guy who was like on the radar for anyone before who you would notice like, okay, what is he doing to change this? And that's where, he came in on a minor league deal, and he's kind of just like, as he said, so I know he switched his grips on his fastballs and his slider, and he's added a changeup. So essentially, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is an entirely different pitcher from what he's been in the past. I mean, that's like not just adding a changeup. Like that would be one thing, but he changed his grips on his fastballs, plural, and slider. So that's 4 new pitches effectively. That's kind of crazy. Some guys don't even throw 4 pitches at all. So that's been kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, the results have been there. He hasn't really had any real bad outings. I mean, his year-to-date ERA is 3.51, and his FIP is right in line, 3.46. I mean, he's not walking guys. He's at 2.44 walks per 9, 7.32 Ks per 9. I mean, he really looks like he could be maybe kind of like that Jason Hamill type pitcher for the Cubs next season. I mean, a little bit of an older guy, you don't really expect him to be a top line guy, but if he can come in and throw, under 4 ERA as the number 5 guy, you're feeling pretty good about that, right?
Yeah. And I think, we've seen the news, right, that Kyle Hendricks is probably done for the season. It's entirely possible that Keegan Thompson is shut down for the season. Not that this season, if we're looking for the next season, the thing with Hendricks is that he's already like he's going to start a throwing program after the Cardinals series, I believe. So when the Cubs leave town again, he heads out to Arizona to start a program. But it's not a program aimed at getting him back this year. It's basically aimed at kind of building up and starting a really long ramp into 2023. Because this is Hendricks' worst season ever. Like, and I would say by far, but like last year was really bad. But this is worse than last year. So here, here's what's wild to me. He threw only 3 more innings this year than in 2020. But he's done it over 4 more starts. So he's got 3 more innings out of 4 more starts this year than in 2020. So he clearly wasn't going deep into games. Just a lot of problems there.
Well, and that did he have a complete game? I think he went 9 and something innings. I don't know if that was, a little while ago, that maybe it was like a second or a third start where he just completely was dominant.
Yeah. It was very early.
So you have to add that one in there too. And if you take that out, then it gets even
it's really bad. Well, yeah. What I noticed, and I wrote about this earlier today, is like the first inning has always, not always, but the first inning has been a problem for him over time. Right?
Definitely the last 3 years.
Yeah. And the last 3 or 4, there's a couple, but But what you would see there, he'd get rough early, and then he'd settle in, and then he'd be great for the rest of the game most times.
He'd be down 3-0.
Yeah, it's not good. You don't want to build yourself a hole, but then all of a sudden he'd be good. This one, however, he got better in the second inning, but then he got really bad in the third and way worse in the fifth. So it's something about, and boy, if you look at the timing, like, well, those are when you're facing the top of the order. Now, normally you'd hope top, middle, bottom through 1, 2, 3, but innings, that is. But he was rarely getting to the point where he would actually mow down 3 guys in a row. And so, you're having to face 4 or 5 batters in the first inning. Well, then guess what? You get the bottom of the order in the second. And then the top of the order comes back around. So that's been a huge struggle for him, and he's just not fooling people.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Thompson. I mean, he pitched on Friday, and, very similar to his last outing, wasn't very good. And I think I mentioned in the lineup post that, or at least suggested that perhaps he would be shut down. And honestly, like, I know you don't want to jump to this conclusion because I don't think you can really, but I think his ERA, when you compare his ERA as a starter versus when he was coming out of the bullpen, out of the bullpen, he's well under 2. As a starter, he was well over 4, near 5, 4.5 at least. And so, and then you see him start to wear down here later in the season. And it just really makes me wonder if eventually he'll end up coming out of the bullpen. I don't think that's going to happen right away. I think the Cubs want him to be a starter. I think they see a lot of upside in him, and I think he's a really, really good pitcher. But man, he was dominant coming out of the bullpen. So it's hard to say kind of how that's going to end.
Yeah. And I mean, think about the mix, so you've got Marcus Stroman, who's really been coming on. Justin Steele, talk about him in a little bit, has come on obviously very strong. And then if you look at Hendricks and Thompson, again, we're putting some of these down in pencil. We've got Hayden Wisniewski waiting in, not we, but the Cubs, Hayden Wisniewski and Caleb Killian in particular, maybe Ben Brown, if some of that stuff works out. But you look at maybe 2 of those guys, Adbert Alzolay, who again, I think is more destined for that swing, long relief role more than anything. I've mentioned that here before. I've been talking about that for a long time, actually. But there are, and we've talked about the possibility of maybe working out a pillow type extension sort of a deal to maybe bring back Wade Miley. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is the same strategy the Cubs have used, which is in terms of loading up on pitching. We might see them carry that into this offseason, certainly into the start of next season. The starters aren't going as deep into games. So do they go with a 6-man rotation? Do they piggyback some guys? I still think that out of that group, right, Marcus Stroman to me is like a number 2 if he at peak. I just, and that's not a knock on him, but he can have those outings. He's just not, if you look at those ace level type guys, if they could go out and find another, and it's okay if you have 2 guys who, if you don't have like a true number 1 style ace and you have a couple of number 2s and then a couple of number 3s, that's not bad, right? You could do that, but I really would like to see them go out and get a dude, right, who because I don't, after these last 2 seasons, we'd love to think that Hendricks can come back healthy, but he was healthy last season and the results weren't good, and the results, okay. Into like 19, there was some rough stuff, right? He's had some little injuries in it. And here's the troublesome part. Like, injuries are going to be troublesome for any pitcher, but Hendricks had the finger thing a few years ago that really messed with him, right? They had to come back from. So like with the way he manipulates the ball and the style of his pitching, right? Having a finger injury is really tough. I mean, it's tough for any pitcher, but it's not like he's powering through it. No, it's, bringing his velocity down from 99 to 98 or something like that, right? That's not it. If you can't really get that change to, and that's what we've seen, right? When he gets in trouble, a lot of times is he's leaving that changeup hanging. He's not getting the curveball to snap, and now he gets relegated a little bit more, and there's not as much velocity difference. He doesn't have the margin for error. So you go out and you find that top line pitcher. I'd love to see them be able to go in and say, we're writing in pen. We've got free agent number 1, Marcus Stroman 2, Justin Steele 3, and then we're going to figure out those other 2. If Hendricks is healthy and performing, there you go. Now, I don't want to think about if he's not, because that would suck. He's under one more year of but he's really got one more year under contract. So it's not like he's not a building block for the future. I'd love to see them do that. And then you figure out with the rest of those guys, and I'd like to see them take some of these dudes who are really shoving down in the minors, maybe guys who are starters. Daniel Palencia, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at go look at my Twitter timeline, and my whole tweet was just stuff plus that I quote tweeted a Greg Huss video, and there's a little back and forth. Ryan Davis, friend of the site, had commented about maybe just calling him up like Hicks, Jordan Hicks, right? Is that it? From St. Louis, who I think was only at like high A at the time when they called him up, but he was starting down there or whatever. But the dude throws like 103, 104, and it's like, boom, let's go. Like, and the thing with that Palencia, he was a 94 mile an hour slider.
Yeah,
he got 94 slider. That's the average fastball, but this thing has movement, and so let's not worry about trying to develop them all the way up as necessarily as starters right now. Again, David Price came up as a reliever. Some of these dudes can do that, whether they've been working with or not. Stretch them out later. But if you've got some arm talent, and clearly they need more room down below, and they just traded away, as you mentioned, traded away a ton of their relievers. They've got guys who are going to be on expiring deals, whatever. I'd like to see them do that. And then guess what? If you need it on a doubleheader day or after a series of a ton of games in a row, or somebody's got, somebody needs a little bit of extra rest, then you can string together. You have guys like, say, Alzolay, Thompson, Palencia, some others who can give you 2 innings.
Jordan
and if
Wicks.
You got to go with a bullpen game, you can do it. Yeah. I mean, you have some of those up there, whether that's Killian coming up in short order or Wisniewski, or you pairing them together. I don't want to see them limit their options in any way by either locking in and saying, okay, Hendricks is for sure. I mean, it would really, really suck, right? But, I mean, they bit the bullet with Jason Hayward. I'm not saying Hendricks is necessarily there, but we've got to start being really honest about it, because these last couple years have been rough. I mean, the dude gave up 31 homers last year, and his home run per 9 was higher this year. It's just that he didn't pitch as many innings. If he pitched as many innings, he'd give up more home runs. And that's just – if you're giving up a home run every start, more or less, that's almost every start. The only reason it wasn't more was because, again, his starts were abbreviated. And I get it that that's an injury thing, but there are some tough decisions there. But, again, I would like to see them put themselves in a position to where they don't have to rely on Hendricks. I want to see them go out and get another pitcher and really get active with some of these young guys and let them come up, because there is so much more stuff. Dude, I saw some, man, I tell you what, like Danis Correa. Oh, my goodness. Like, you talk about a dude. And this dude, he's like 5'10", $150. Okay? He could walk on the field with my son's middle school team and not look out of place. Right? My son's almost that size. Ryan's like 5'8", but he's like $165. So this guy's not big. But, again, 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Like, he came out of the gate in the game we saw the other day, the I-Cubs, 100, 99, 98. And then he's snapping off sliders, 91, 92. And then he'll fool somebody on a change. The change needs a little work. But when not Adrian Sampson, Matt Swarmer was a starter, right? We've seen him up in Chicago. And that dude's like 91, 92-mile-an-hour fastball, 81, 82 slider. Now you've got a dude going 100 and 90, like literally 10 miles an hour faster. And he followed Brian Hudson, who's a 6'8" lefty. Now you bring in Danis Correa, who's a 5'10" righty, throwing 100. And when you look at the Rays, and you look at a lot of the reason for their successes across the board on their pitching staff, they've got different heights, different arm angles, different variety of stuff. The Cubs have the potential to be able to do that with their pitching staff in a similar way. I don't want to say like, oh, be like the Rays, like that's, but those different angles and confusing people and going, again, left, right, low 3/4, over the top, sidearm, the different variety of velocity. there's so much potential there. I hope they don't limit themselves to saying, gosh, we got to give a starting spot to Hendricks. I hope he earns it, but man, it'll be tough if that's the dude who you're counting on to be kind of top 60% of the rotation.
Yeah, but I mean, if he's the 4 or 5 guy, then are you feeling that bad about it? I mean, you mentioned if the Cubs go out and sign Jacob deGrom, for example, and then they've got Marcus Stroman and Justin Steele. I mean, those are 3. That's a very good top 3. You can pretty much add anybody there. And if you add Sampson or if you add Thompson or if you got, I mean, think about if you've got Sampson performing like he's performing, Hendricks performing, at around a 4 or sub 4 ERA, and then coming out of the bullpen, you've got Alzolay and Thompson. And and some of the guys that you were just
for
talking
Hendricks
about,
to get to a 4, he's going to have to be a lot better than what he has been the last 2 years.
And then if you've got some injuries, you've got Killian down there waiting in the wings. Mm-hmm. You've got Wisniewski down there developing. So it's not that when you look at the Cubs, their projected starters for next season, if you if you sign one big guy, or even if you go and trade for somebody, and then the bullpen. It feels really good. Like especially seeing what they're doing right now and how they're pitching right now down the stretch. I mean, and their bullpen is just kind of cobbled together, to be honest with you. I mean, Kervin Castro, who I think is the worst of the bunch. I don't even know why he's still on the team, to be honest. That's a DFA or waiver wire pickup that's not working out real well.
Not ideal, to be honest. But
he's got a 9.45 ERA.
Yeah,
2.7 home runs per 9 innings, and
that's not good. Yeah, that's the thing.
9.
Yeah, the way walks and homers, man. That's you can do one or the other, because it's like a solo shot's not gonna be bad, but you walk followed by a homer, that'll sink you there late in the game.
Yeah,
not ideal.
And it's like every time the guy comes in, he's giving up runs, and so I would be very happy to see him go by the wayside very soon here. But I mean, other than that, and I don't think Wick is necessarily. I don't know. It's hard to say like the role he's going to play. I mean, he has a potential, but he hasn't been real great this year. He's given up a lot more home runs than he ever has. He's given up 7 so far this year. I think I was looking prior years. He doesn't have as many innings pitched, but he hasn't given up more than 1 home run. I think given up 7 so far this year.
Yeah,
like 50 some innings pitched.
Yeah, it's again. That's I think there was a hope, early on, like, man, this guy could be. But of course, if we had a list of potential Cubs closer of the future, that we could kind of list out there, right? He would have been on there, and Dylan Maples and some other ones. Obviously, Maples definitely didn't work out.
Whatever happened with Dylan Maples? Where's he at now?
I don't know. What did the Phillies pick him up at some point, or the Nats, or somewhere?
I just thought the most wicked stuff.
But he couldn't command it, right? And that was the troublesome part. And he almost, he'd almost quit at one point, and then he got it back together. I think the trouble with a guy like that is like, we've talked about this. There's so much separation that when he was on, when the slider was on, like, you would see dudes bailing out, right? Right-handed batters would bail out of the box.
Yeah.
Because that slider would come in and just bam for a strike. But when it wasn't on, and the trouble was he couldn't command the fastball. He couldn't throw his fastball for a strike, and that thing was, mid to upper 90s when he really had it working. But if you can't, what we saw so many times, there were a number of times with him where he had no idea where the fastball was going, so he had to just fall back on going slider, slider, slider. Well, eventually, you're going to put a cement mixer in there, and it's going to get turned around 400 feet in the wrong direction. And that's one of the things that we've talked about, and I've started to pay more attention to, is the idea we see some of these guys who have high walk numbers. The problem is not because everybody's just throw strikes, just throw strikes. No, that's not the issue with most of these guys. First of all, if you quote unquote just throw strikes, you're going to be out of the game pretty quick. You can't just throw strikes unless, again, like you're Jacob deGrom, right, or Max Scherzer, or if it's Clayton Kershaw's curveball. If there are a few guys who could honestly never throw a ball outside the zone and still be fine. But the key is to throw pitches that look like strikes and then aren't, so that a hitter can't get the bat on them. But if you are someone who, again, when somebody like Maples or you see some other guys, when they miss that badly, and then you can sit on a certain pitch, that's where you get in trouble. But, and this is something that again, Steele is going to work on a little bit more with the changeup. But if you can get some of those working, and that's where Hendricks is most effective, if you can tunnel those pitches, and it's either the movement profile or the velocity, one or the other, fools a hitter. They are thinking it's a fastball, and it drops off the table as a change in Hendricks' case, or it gets some cut or run or whatever, cut or fade. Then they're missing. But that's one of the things. So a guy like Killian, right? We're seeing some issues. He's had a lot of trouble commanding his pitches when he's come up. And again, if I defer to Sahadev Sharma, a lot of that's because prior to really kind of late last year and into the Arizona Fall League, Killian was used to working like 92 to 94 with his fastball. Well, now he's sitting 95, 96 and touching 98, 99. And so, again, that kind of difference, that's going to have an effect on the way you throw your curve, the way you throw your slider, and how those things move. And so he's trying to get used to what is effectively, like we said with Sampson, what is effectively a different repertoire. And so that takes time with a lot of these guys. And as I look at that developmentally, you go, well, you could have him in the minors, but it's not a matter of I mean, I shouldn't say it's not a matter of facing batters. That seems strange, but like he's not going to learn anything different in AAA than he could in the majors. And I almost wonder, is that a guy who you put in that bullpen and say, hey, you're going to serve in that kind of the role that Alzolay has played before, or Alec Mills? It's like, we'll have you do a spot start every now and again, but we'll have you in there as kind of this long relief. And we want you up here with our best coaches, right? Daniel Moscas and some of the other ones, and Tommy Hotovy, and the equipment and the tech that they have. Like, we want you in the majors. You're going to learn just as well up here, and you might as well sink or swim. So let's go. I think there are a number of guys who could be in that role, and I'd like to see that, because I think people see that there are a lot of walks. They see these issues, and they think that's something you've got to have experience to work out. You got to build up innings in the minors. I don't really think that's the case all the time.
Yeah. So getting back to the games over this weekend, after Friday's game and Thompson's short outing, he goes to the IL with lower back tightness. That feels like just kind of a reason to kind of shut him down. And I don't know if he's going to be shut down for the rest of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. There's only a little over a month and a half, I guess, right around a month and a half left in the season. And and maybe they bring him back just to kind of see. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what approach they take with Keegan Thompson, but there's no point in risking his health if they feel like, if it really is a lower back issue, or if they just feel like he's kind of toast, shutting him down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Moving on to Saturday's game, Stroman, you mentioned Marcus Stroman was just so good. 7 2/3 inning. He just couldn't get that last out there in the 8th inning, but he only gave up 2 hits. One hit really, I thought, was an error, and the other hit was just a bloop single, and looked really good. I mean, he's just, when he looks good, he looks really solid. Like he's like you said, he's not like going to overpower you at all, but he's definitely like that solid kind of number 2 guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1. And then Sunday,
I enjoy Steele, a solid number 2.
And then Justin Steele. Now, Justin Steele is different. I do believe that Justin Steele can be a dominant number 1 pitcher, and I think he's showing the repertoire. He's got the repertoire to do it. His strikeouts are up these last few games, and man, you really see him oozing confidence, right? I mean, like his presence on the mound is just. It's developed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and what's funny is, so I wrote about him a couple years ago. So I guess this would have been 2020 Cubs convention, right? Because they actually still had it then. The world shut down 2 months later, right? CubsCon is in January, mid-January, right? So it was like 2 months after that is when the world went to hell. but I had interviewed him there a little bit. We were talking about the changeup and how he worked with Cole Hamels at spring training to kind of get that grip a little bit. And I kind of thought that was going to be a thing for him, and it isn't. But we're kind of working into that. But what was interesting is then I asked Matt Dory, who's one of the Cubs farm guys, who's now been kind of moved into the VP of player personnel or whatever the role is, so more of the major league role. But he was at the time the Cubs farm director. And what's interesting is then, so if we transport ourselves back, 2.5 years, almost 3 years in time, at that point, the premier lefty prospect that the Cubs had, bless you, John Sneezy, he hit the mute button for those of you who weren't watching and managed to get away from it. But everybody was buzzing about Braylon Marquez right now. Again, prior to the 2020. But at the time, Dory had said, this is a guy who has very similar stuff to Marquez. And a lot of people were kind of like, I don't know, because at the time, and here's the funny thing is at the time, Steele had a reputation for injuries, hadn't really pitched very much. So now, look at how the turntables, as Michael Scott would say. But it's clearly there. And I think what helps Steele a lot too is he's very much a fiery bulldog type of guy out there on the mound. He's a super laid back personality, really easygoing guy. And I think, he's not wound up outside of those times when he's on the mound. And so I think he's able to channel all of that into it. He doesn't take a lot of it off the mound with him. He doesn't bring a lot of excess baggage onto the mound. And, now he's a dad. You know what I mean? I think there's something to be said for that. I think he's got great perspective, I guess, is where that helps all the way. Not to say if people don't have kids, they don't have perspective, but for him in particular, you hear him talking about it. And I think that's just something, having gotten to know him a little bit over the years, that I think that's something that does actually help him as a pitcher. But yeah, his stuff, again, if he can add the changeup or if he can develop a little bit, whether it's kind of a differentiation on a breaking ball, and I think he can take that next step, because that's the one thing that's kind of hampered him is the walks, right? And some of that has to do with hitters being able to kind of just spit on those pitches that aren't really getting in there. So yeah, I love what he's, to me, outside of Stroman, he's the only other guaranteed starter right now. I mean, I think he's, to me, put his name in ink. The other guys I'm putting in pencil. Stroman and Steele, though, ink 1-2 as it currently sits, and then whatever they choose to do to fill the other 3 spots or 4 spots or whatever it is.
Just to get back to what you were saying last episode and the episode before that, kind of pounding on the table for Jacob deGrom. I know there are a lot of naysayers out there that want to point to Jacob deGrom's injury history, but with the prospects that the Cubs have in their system and the options that they have, I would not feel bad about being real careful with a guy like Jacob deGrom. I mean, this is a guy that, listen, you're going to get wins if you can put a decent offense out there and you feel like the Cubs are real close. We'll see what happens with Brennan Davis if he can end up coming up, and some of their other prospects who are really close. But Canario looks like he's just mashing. He just got promoted to Iowa, and so offensively, you feel like the Cubs really don't need to do all that much except just kind of continue to develop guys. And I think the same goes for their pitching. And so if you bring a guy in like deGrom, even if he does get, injured or has something small, you still feel pretty good about being able to backfill him there. And so I don't know. I would love to see the Cubs sign Jacob deGrom. I feel like if they did that, I think you're right back at 2015.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, certainly the Facebook response is largely negative to it. Oh, he's always hurt. Well, that's cool, but he's healthy now. And as long as you score 3 runs behind him, you're going to win. So, and again, if we're not talking about an 8-year, $250 million deal, right? I'm saying I would give the dude $150 million for 3 years, flat out. Like, I would do that. And guess what? Like, I ran the numbers on it. Like, the Cubs could conceivably, I don't think they will spend $100 million, but they could. And Jason Hayward's money falls off after next year. So does Kyle Hendricks. So there's like another $40 million or whatever it is, right? That you would have for the following seasons. And so there is a ton of flexibility. If you're looking at a relatively short, a 3 to 4 year deal, I structured it almost identical to what Scherzer got, because again, if DeGrom could get out of a 3 year deal or he could opt out after 2 years, he would be the exact same age as Scherzer was when he signed his huge deal with the Mets. So if you still pitch well, and we're seeing from Justin Verlander, right? Verlander's as good now as he's ever been, and he's what, 40, 41? It's incredible. So
I think he's a free agent this year too, isn't he?
Yeah, because he signed a 1 year deal, so you go after that. And he did that off of a QO, so I don't think they can give him another one. And so there's a lot, right? You can point to age, point to injuries, whatever, but that gives you a true number one. I mean, and in the purest sense of the words, I mean, the dude is over a certain stretch, right? He may be the best pitcher of all time if you look at not aggregate, right? But if you look at certain stretch, a 10-start stretch or whatever you want to do. I know that's not indicative of being healthy the entire season, which is important. And I get it. And a lot of people say, hey, you have to be able to pitch, right? The best ability is availability, right? That's cool. But all right, would you rather have Kyle Hendricks at his current level being able to pitch a full season, or Jacob deGrom at his current level being able to pitch half a season, right?
Yeah,
as long as it's the second half, I don't care. As long as he's available in the playoffs. But as you mentioned, as I've said, they've got the depth that will allow them to swing big, because look at the Mets. The Mets had really good pitching depth. They were able to go and be in first place without Scherzer or deGrom for a while there. And then with only one of them, and now with both of them.
Exactly.
That's the point. That's why you have depth. You don't have it just so it's like, oh, okay, cool. Because if that's the case, and one of those guys, you don't get a top line guy, and now one of your 5 starters gets hurt, now it becomes more difficult, right? But I just think this is a team that needs to go out and spend some financial resources and then backfill that with those prospects they've got, get some of those dudes up, let them work out of the bullpen, and then if they're needed, you can stretch them back out in the rotation or as swing, whatever, because there are a lot. And, Wisniewski looked really rough that first outing, but he hadn't pitched in 10 days, right? Because of the trade and all the other stuff. His second one, not so great. But his last time out, I think the last 2 starts, he's had like 11 strikeouts and 1 or 2 walks, something like that. And that slider is just, it's a Frisbee, right? The thing. And I don't mean like, and I'm talking like Frisbee that you throw with a little bit of hook to it, because that thing comes in out of nowhere. And he can either back foot lefties, or he can front hip a righty and make a dude think that thing's coming right at him before it bends in. He's got the type of stuff. And again, he's one that kind of developed that later. If you look at the scouting on him, similar to what I'd mentioned with Killian, he's a guy who's working at lower velocities earlier and who kind of his stuff developed. And you see that a lot. And I think it's even more so now under professional instruction, where that stuff ticks up, and all of a sudden, so the pitcher you're seeing now in the Cubs organization is not necessarily the same guy who was with the Yankees even a year ago, right? So we're starting to see some more of that. But I just love what the guys coming up through the minors, the depth that they have, and we're starting to see them come up to Iowa. I think inevitably, right, we've got to start seeing, like, Frank Schwindel didn't play the last 4 games in the iCubs last series here in Indianapolis.
They're so backed up at first base. I don't know what they're doing with Schwindel or why they're not releasing him, to be honest. But,
I don't know if it's just like kind of a favor to him at this point. But, I mean,
it's not really doing him a favor, though,
well, yeah. I mean, maybe he can go find another team. Or maybe he doesn't want, I don't know. Maybe his family doesn't want to move or whatever he's where. I'm not really sure. But if you get optioned down and then you're not playing, right? That does not signal to me that
you're behind Mervis and Rivas for sure, right?
Yeah, and I know Mervis didn't play yesterday, but he played Saturday. And he's building some things up. But then you look at Canario; he's got to come up play in that outfield somewhere. And Brennan Davis is going to be hopefully back. He's taking at bats in the ACL right now. Ideally, he will be back as well. Now you've got two guys, both on the 40-man roster, both who are expected to be in Chicago by at least the end of this season, one way or the other, and certainly next season because of those roster implications. So, and I mean, you got Darius Hill who's down there just hitting everything in sight, and bats left-handed, I might add. So I keep looking around at Rafael, and Rafael Ortega homered the other day, but still, I'm looking at that going like, what is Ortega doing? Why haven't we seen that? But there are spots that will open up between Ortega and Hermosillo, Wisdom, some others, not Wisdom, but Schwindel. Although who knows? I think it'd be silly to DFA Wisdom just because of the power quotient. But there are not many spots left. And right now, I'm wondering how the hell it's going to work at Iowa. Like unless they do something with Schwindel, I don't know. But there's a few too many guys down there in order to really get enough spots and enough playing time. And that's the thing. Like, you're trying to develop these guys. You don't develop by sitting on the bench, right? If you're trying to get a guy better, he's got to play. So you can't promote Canario and then be like, all right, dude, well, you'll be our fourth outfielder and you'll play twice in a series, right? He's got to be up there playing. So I'm interested.
It does feel like the Cubs have been a little slow to make the obvious moves this year. I mean, like Hayward, for example, they did make the move, and maybe when he went on the IL, that was them making the move before they announced that they were making the move. And Matt Mervis, bringing him up, that seems like that should be something that they should do. You got the one thing that I would say is PJ Higgins is playing really well since he's been called up, and there was a stretch recently where it was like a week or so where he hardly played at all. He came in the other day and he just picked right up where he left off.
Yeah, when everybody's like, every time a lineup would come out, like the first response would be like, is PJ Higgins still on the roster? Like, why is this guy not playing?
That was so weird.
Yeah, and
it's not that he was doing bad; he was doing really well.
Yeah, that's the part. But that felt like, like Ross was channeling Joe Madden, where there'd be these weird stretches where like a dude would be hot, and then he would sit like when Ben Zobrist had to tell him like, no, David Bodie should actually get the start today, and Madden had to like change his lineup because Zobrist gave him his spot. Bodie was hitting hot at the time. Not so much speaking of somebody who's down in Iowa, right? I was at the iCubs game on Saturday. It was like Schwindel didn't play, but Bodie was in there. Swarmer was starting. Narciso Crook was in the lineup. Alfonso Rivas was in the lineup. There were a ton of guys who had been up in Chicago at one point or another. But Jackson Frazier was starting. Speaking of another guy who, like, we've just, again, I had assumed the whole time Hap's going to get traded. Frazier will come back up. It's just a really weird kind of a setup where but there's another guy like Frazier did get DFA'd, chose to come back to the organization, and to his credit, has stayed down in AAA the whole time. Yeah, changed his name. He's a whole different person.
Different guy.
But I'm kind of surprised that's not a dude that some other team wouldn't want to maybe just take a flyer on or something. And
I mean, the Cubs kind of did, right? But it's just he just never got clicked in there. It just never.
Although I still think he would have been a much better option than Hayward. I know he would have been, but that that's neither here nor there now.
You had to let that situation play out.
Yeah, because now he's got no chance because Hap didn't get traded. Suzuki's obviously still there, and then for whatever reason, again, Ortega is still patrolling center field quite often. But you've got Velasquez and Morel who can both play center, right? But now we're talking about Canario and we're talking about Davis. So and then Pete Crow Armstrong is going to come up. At some point, right, we're looking at this, they're going to have to make some trades with these guys. They absolutely will have to. There's just not enough room for everyone, provided that's the thing you got to do, though, is you got to trade them before, and you hope the guy you trade is not the one who ends up just being awesome with whatever team he goes to while you chose to stick with the guy who doesn't do as well. But, there's a lot of options. I keep looking around and just, it'll be because Canario, man, 2 more home runs. I love the changes he's made. First 30 home run season by a Cubs prospect in 2014. And Chris Bryant hit 43.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
crazy.
when he was like the consensus, minor league player of the year, there's like no question. I mean, Canario's got an outside shot at it, right? He's got about a month left. I mean, he'd have to have a really, really hot
Yeah,
month.
he'd have to go on a tear.
Especially at AAA. I don't think it'll happen. But it is interesting that you've now
like
got
35.
Canario and Mervis both at Iowa after starting the season in South Bend. You don't see that a lot with position players moving that. Sometimes you'll see that from pitchers. Guys who I mean, Maples made an incredible run up through the system. Ben Leeper made a run up through it. Scott Kobos last year made a run all the way from low A up to triple A. And so you'll see that a lot of times with relievers, right? Guys who are out of college, who are 23, 24, maybe a little bit advanced. But you don't often see it with hitters like that to have started out that low and then move up those levels. But those are the 2 best hitters in the entire system. And it's cool to see them get some love and to move up, and it's been fun to watch them.
Yeah, it's been good. You mentioned Brendan Davis. He's at the Arizona Complex League right now. He's gone 2 for 80 at home run the other day, which is nice. Miguel Amaya, day to day, he dislocated his left ring finger. So he's been playing really well. I mean, he's just been DHing, but he's been playing really well. I think, where is he at? Tennessee. And so he's definitely looking like he could be on track for arrival next season. This dislocated left finger isn't going to hold him back too long. And he, while he was out for what was he out for, like a year?
Just about, over a year, actually, because he was out for a while and then had surgery.
He looks good at the plate. I mean, he's batting really well, and everything looks good. And I would be surprised if he doesn't come up next season, which leads us to Wilson Contreras again, which is what do the Cubs end up doing with Wilson Contreras? I kind of feel like they're going to QO him, right?
I think so.
They
could. I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't. Although I'm shocked that they didn't. I was shocked when they didn't trade him. So they're doing things to shock me. That does not preclude them from signing him to an extension and working something out with him. But I do think they slapped the qualifying offer on him, and then that gives him a little bit better leverage, right? Because that'll kind of hurt what he's able to command. But I think we'll see.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. A lot of interesting stuff, and really what intrigues me the most is, and hopefully we get to see this, is kind of what happens the remainder of the season. It's the Cubs. They've got a little bit of a rough stretch. I mean, we were looking at the stretch that they had before the weekend, and we were kind of getting concerned about it. I think both you and I predicted that the Cubs would end up taking 2 of 7 out of this from this homestand, and they've already got 2 of 3. I really should have had the win yesterday, but if not for the bullpen just completely imploding, they probably would have had that game yesterday. So they go into this 5-game series. It's a doubleheader tomorrow, and then a game on Monday and Wednesday and Thursday before they then again head out on the road. And but St. Louis is playing really well. I mean, you feel like if the Cubs could just get 2 games, I mean, they got swept by the Cardinals earlier this month. And if the Cubs could get just 2 games here, I think the Cubs would be pretty happy with that. I think that would be best case scenario. Who are the Cubs pitchers over the next few days? Let me take a look real quick. They've got Smiley going today, and then all TBDs over the next few days. They've got the Stroman set to pitch. This will be interesting too. Is who do the Cubs bring up now that Thompson's on the IL? Because they brought up Anderson Espinoza, who's another guy I'd really not like to see pitch again. But they're going to have to bring somebody up to start.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get to have a 27th man on Tuesday, right? So
do they bring up Swarmer, or do they roll with Killian?
But I mean,
I guess a chance Wisniewski comes up.
No, I don't. Well, I mean,
is he on the 40 man?
Yeah. Well, no, he's not
I
yet.
don't
He
think he
has
is.
to be added by the end of the season, so I don't think they'll make a move with him. He'll be added after. Is Yadi Molina going to be back from watching his Puerto Rican basketball team play?
No,
So I
not
want
sure that
to talk about
matters.
this because this guy has been lauded all as a great leader and great manager. But I know at least one game, it's happened, I think a few other times, though, where he was arguing with an umpire about a call while runs were scoring behind his back. He was paying no attention to the live play going on the
didn't see
field. I've seen
that.
that. He left the team. They're playing games. He's on administrative leave for business reasons, and it's because he owns a basketball team in Puerto Rico that he left the Cardinals to go to Puerto Rico to watch his basketball team play. A team that is in a playoff race, leading its division. You are in your final year with this team that you played. What the hell is that? And I don't know if they're like, are the fans giving him a pass? I haven't really paid. I try not to pay attention to
Of course, the fans are giving him a pass. Come on.
But that's bullshit. That's not like having a kid. You know what I mean?
Cardinals, in his defense, the Cardinals have won 7 in a row.
Yeah, maybe it's because maybe they're better off without him. I don't know, but
yeah,
but that just cracks me up with that dude, right? So I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, I just think as good as the Cubs have been playing, it's still. I mean, man, but just between Goldschmidt and Arenado alone, right? Let alone any of their other players. I just feel like Goldschmidt this year in particular. I mean, he's back to kind of the MVP level production, and you just can't throw the ball to that dude at this point. Like he's not as hot now as what he was. There was a period there. It was like the whole month of June or whatever, where it's like just don't throw it anywhere near the plate or he'll hit a home run. Maybe he's just killing it.
Yeah, and then if you don't pitch to him, you've got Arenado coming behind him.
Right. So yeah, now you put a man on base for that. So now it's a 2-run homer there. So it's those guys and then Albert Pujols. What the hell happened to him?
That's just nuts. What is going on there?
He's got like 6 home runs in the last 8 games. He's closing in on 700. Was he like 13 shy now or something like that? Or where's he at? He just passed Stan Musial for most total bases or second most total bases. Are they just
piping him fastballs right down Main Street?
I don't know, man. But all of a sudden, the stroke looks good though. I mean, it's not like some fat old dude who just managed to get into one and snuck it right over the wall. Like he's popping them pretty good. It is insane to watch, but and you know damn well with him playing the Cubs, something's gonna happen. Like I just feel like this is him exacting his final action against them and just and it's gonna suck.
It won't really matter.
No, unfortunately.
That's the good thing is that it won't really matter. But at the end of the day, yeah, this, you're just looking at how St. Louis is playing. They've won 7 straight, but the Cubs are playing well. That's why I say, I mean, I'm going to go out and I'm going to say the Cubs are going to win. I'm going to say the Cubs are going to win 3 out of the 5 games of this series.
Ooh.
I know that's crazy. It feels crazy. But I think the Cubs are playing really well. And I think we should see Justin. Will we see Steele again? No, probably not because Stroman's going to go.
Yeah, because the number, because it's compressed because it's 5 games, but it's just the 4 days. So I don't know if they'll. Yeah. I don't think they'll turn around on it. We won't
see Thompson. Yeah, it might be tough because
I got 2, man.
Sampson.
Yeah, I got 2. I just don't think the way the rotation sets up that it works out real well in the Cubs' favor.
No,
and that's saying something because we're already talking about a depleted. And I didn't even mention this earlier. I know I mentioned Miley and possibly doing something, but that's another dude who like his shoulder's still not cooperating. Like we might not see him again if that's the case. And he can't come back and pitch this season. I don't know that they try to run it back with him, but I mean, he's made 4 starts. That just has worked out pretty disaster. And he looked good over the course of those starts, but. I mean, we talk about him and Hendricks both dealing with those shoulder issues and being out for as much as they were. Man, that's tough. But they're going to have to cobble some stuff together. I think on the get a 27th man
scary.
and then stretch some things out. Piggyback some guys, move them around, whatever has to happen.
I kind of feel like we're going to see Swarmer.
Possibly. Does Mark
Well,
Leiter Jr., does he lead off
actually,
a
is
bullpen game?
Swarmer on the 40-man, or did they DFA him?
I didn't think they DFA'd him.
So
Although, well, I don't know.
Was
He
it
just
Sampson that they DFA'd? No, one of those two.
Swarmer started on Saturday, so for Iowa. So I mean, he could definitely come in and take one of those starts to be what Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I mean, he could start Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, well, Stroman's
Thursday, I should say, not Friday, but Thursday.
Stroman's in there for Thursday, so
yeah. So that I don't know. I think they'll probably opt to go then with a bullpen type because I don't think they'd want to pull somebody up and try to do short. So whether that's I don't know who the hell they're what the hell they want to do.
Can I take my answer back? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I hope the Cubs take 3 out of 5, but I feel like they're probably going to take 2, best case scenario. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, that's it for this week. We can let's circle back after the Cardinals series. They play a Thursday day game, and then they go to Milwaukee on Friday night. So we'll probably have another show on Friday. So if you guys are looking for us, I think that's where we will be. Friday.
Sounds good. If you're looking for me, I'll be making t-shirts. That's we got a cottage industry going over here.
You got a new side gig going there. You're
yeah. I think I might have gotten myself into I may be in trouble with my wife when she finds out some of this stuff. She found out she knows a little bit of it. We'll see if the folks at Duke get back to me on that too. It's oh man. And I want to share a quick anecdote right before we go. So you see these, if you see my shirt, if you're watching this, MASH Mervis, and you can't get the actual MASH font from the TV show. This is close. So it's just a stencil font, just says MASH Mervis, right? And so my son and I were going to the game on Saturday. I was out all week, so I didn't get to go to any of the earlier ones in the Saturday evening game. So we were able to get out there for it. And we wanted to get there early, but I was talking to my wife. It's like, hey, could you make these shirts? Thought that'd be kind of fun to wear to the game. And she's like, yeah, sure. Well, she got them in the washer, and I go out and find her. And I was like, hey, we wanted to leave like now. We needed those shirts. And so we were kind of in a rush, and we got them made because I wanted to get there like when the gates open. We sit there and enjoy some time down there and watch some BP, whatever, if they're going to have it. Long story short, we didn't leave till after we wanted to. There were the Colts had a game downtown. There was something going on at the zoo, and there was a concert. All of these things. The Colts are a few blocks away, but the zoo and White River State Park are immediately adjacent to Victory Field. So downtown was a mess, and parking garages were full. So we didn't get into the ballpark till like 10 or 15 minutes before first pitch. And Mervis was over there warming up, and I told my son was all hungry. I told him, I was like, hey man, go down there by the netting and let him see your shirt or whatever. And he's like, no, it's fine. He's like 13. Like he speaks in like grunts and whatever monosyllabic words can come up. And so we didn't get a chance to. We went up and we hung out in the radio booth with Alex Cohen, the iCubs broadcaster. So I did like 3 or 4 innings of iCubs radio. That was fun because Alex just does it by himself. My son's sitting up there, and Alex is like, hey, good to meet you, Ryan. And my son's just like, That was like his response. I said, you can speak with words, right? Anyway, I had a picture of it. And I think it's Matt's dad, who's active out there on not active, but like he follows. A lot of the family members will follow stuff on it. So he liked it or whatever, and followed me. And then Mervis quote tweeted the picture like, hey, where can I get some of these? And so then a couple people have reached out since then. So we're gonna try to make up a couple. I want to get a few together for him and get them sent out there. But I just thought that was neat because like I just sort of joked about it, like, oh, MASH Mervis, and I just thought it was kind of a goofy, funny thing. But then to see him really dig that and embrace it, I thought was pretty neat. So it's cool when you do something like that. I think like, oh, this is just some silly, goofy thing. But he reached out and was just was thankful for it and just he thought it was cool. So I thought that was neat because it is. I struggle sometimes. Not with imposter syndrome necessarily, but there's a lot of times like I could see there's a few people watching this, right? Or I could see that there's people who read stuff, but I still kind of labor under the impression that those aren't real people that exist in the world. Like somehow those numbers come up and there's people reading and that those aren't actual people that I would ever interact with. Right. But like players are people too. They're reading stuff that goes out.
There's
there.
Another
like,
shirt for you.
Yeah. They're seeing this stuff. They're out there with it. And so to them, I think especially for someone who's a little bit less heralded, although he's definitely getting a lot more love, right up to number 21 on the MLB pipeline list. He's 12. Lance Brozdowski's list. For any of you who are prospect people, I get that, and I do it myself. Like, MLB pipeline is easier to cite because it is a national publication, and you kind of compare across teams more easily. But I think Brozdowski's list at Marquee is much, much better, more informed, better context. And Mervis is up to 12 on that one. And I know, scouts are down on the dude. They don't think he moves that well, whatever. I'm like, a lot of teams wanted to draft him as a pitcher or sign him as a pitcher. He was a two-way player at Duke. I think he's athletic enough to handle it, and the swing looks pretty darn good. So, so that's cool. And just kind of neat to make a little bit of an impact, and even in a silly kind of fun way. So,
yeah, absolutely. Had you ever talked to Matt Mervis before, or
no,
was that your first interaction with him?
I still have only really communicated on Twitter. But we saw him when my son and I were down in Tennessee. We saw him playing down there, and he had kind of just, I think fairly recently, I forget when he got promoted. I think he got 100 plate appearances in at South Bend, right? So that would have been mostly April. So he had been at Tennessee for a little while. It was early in June, and we saw him homer there. And at the time, we were just referring to him as Never Nervous Mervis. But then MASH just comes across a lot better. It flows a little more easily and lends itself better with this. And so it was really cool, though, because it's neat to kind of pick out. And I'd known about him, right? I'd heard when they signed him, and we've had some guys who wrote about him here for us, but I hadn't really paid much attention. But then so it's kind of neat to just sort of pick out a dude. And I've written about him, talked about him a lot, because I really do believe every once in a while you just see somebody sometimes who you're this guy kind of has an it factor that I can't really describe, but I like, and I think he's going to do big things. And he's one of those that I caught on to. So that's kind of neat. So I'm looking forward to being able to get a chance to meet him, because that's one of the cool things is, again, these guys, sometimes I think from our perspective, we don't think much about how those impact people one way or the other, right? And whether they're actually seeing it, whether it's somebody like Rich with his camera, being out there and taking pictures, right? It just, for a lot of these guys, just having fans there at the ballpark, because there's a lot of times there aren't, and people who recognize them, right? And who want to show them that support. And so then, that's just a cool thing for them, is someone who's not a family member, right? And just putting their name on a t-shirt is a cool thing. So
yeah, it's just part of the process. If you think about being a prospect and coming up, like you said, I think what we tend to relate to are the guys who are at the major league level, or the superstars, but when you look at these guys, when they're prospects, they're just normal guys, they're just they're guys that play baseball just like our kids, and they're have good families and have been through kind of all the different levels of club baseball and little league and all the different things that you go through, and they're just guys hoping to get to the majors. And so, yeah, when they start to see some of these things, it's got to be a really cool experience for them. And every minor league guy that we've been in contact with has just been incredible to us. And they're just good guys. All they want to do is just go out there and play baseball, and they love people like us and this community, especially around the Cubs. How unique that is, where you've got people who are just really true baseball fans, knowledgeable fans, and not guys that are going to go out there and troll you very much. You don't get that too much around the Cubs. You just get really genuine people, and I think they really appreciate being a part of that community too.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's one thing. Just with our coverage, the one thing I try to do, particularly at the minor league level. Now, I'm not saying once you make it to the majors and you're making more money, then you're more deserving of criticism or something like that, or that you should be criticized. But I think once someone has reached a certain level where it is certainly their job, it's their profession at the minor league level, but those guys have so many other challenges and things that they're trying to worry about and try to realize their dream, right? And so I try to just stick always with positive stuff as best I can, right? And try to promote these guys and to really, because it might not end up being with the Cubs, but some of them, and again, like obviously Efros came up and did really well with the Cubs, and that's what kind of brought him to the Yankees. I'm still going to follow him, root for that guy for the entirety of his career. I don't care. There's certain people like that, and I think that being able to, I'm not saying you're less genuine, but there's a certain point, like with money comes a different sort of mentality. You've got to be a little bit more guarded in a lot of cases. There's more stuff with agents and other managers, and you've got to kind of insulate yourself. And I totally understand that. At that minor league level, though, the guys have their guard down. They haven't really gotten too jaded about things. And so it is kind of neat, and you can get some really good thoughts from them. And again, I think they appreciate it. You get to hey, you're playing for the Cubs in Chicago. I'm not saying you should expect for people to know you and to recognize you, but it's a lot easier. You're getting recognized. We're leaving the game after you go out to Tennessee and you're leaving. There's a couple people signing autographs, but you can kind of walk through the line, get out to your car, and get out of there without much of a hassle. It's a little bit easier. So anyway, I just wanted to share that a little bit because it was really fun because I got yesterday. I told I haven't even noticed it until you texted me about it. I went out to my wife. I was like, "Hey, Mervis saw the shirts. He wants some." So she's like, "Well, what?" And so yeah. So we'll see. But
they're cool shirts. I want one. By the way,
yeah, we'll see. Wait in line. You got Mash himself. Merv is
I understand there's a
he's got some. I think some of the other guys at Iowa saw them and like Levi Jordan, who's one of the players there. He commented on the tweet, so it's just kind of funny because I think it's a great nickname. I love
to
it.
Help you like manufacture them. You may need to be sending me some supplies.
You want to come? Hey, we got the T-shirt press, we got the Cricut vinyl cutter. We're gonna order up some stuff.
I don't have that.
Yeah, so hey, you could fly out here, spend a weekend. And we'll spend about 12 hours sweatshopping it in our little craft room here. So we'll
drinking some hate.
Yeah, hey, it's only like 70 degrees. It's nice and cool out here right now. So
that does sound good.
Yeah, we'll crack the window. Sit out by the fire in the evenings, drinking bourbon and beer, and make a whole show of it. So
who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in these shirts that we're talking about here, check out his Twitter.
You can check out the Twitter and then get prepared to get in line. I actually I did have another dude, like one of his former teammates from Duke reached out to me. He's like, I'd like one. And I said, like, I went like Duke baseball. I told him I could make them for him in Carolina blue. I think
I'm sure he appreciated that.
Duke baseball. I'm sure that would work out real well. But no, we'll see, because they're like one-off creations, so it may take some time, but hopefully we'll get it all set. So anyway, we'll go from there. But yeah, cool, good show. We'll talk again on Friday.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you guys on Friday. Until then, have a great week.
See ya.
And we're out.